But first, let's unpack what's really going on. One day, normal life, the next day, robot overlords. But the real shift is way quieter than that. It's already happening in slow, boring background ways that most people aren't paying attention to. And by the time they finally notice, the people who adapted early will be years ahead in skills, opportunities, and income. I want to show you what that actually looks like in real life and what to do about it. Because this channel isn't about hype or AI will make you rich in 7 days. It's about realistic, grounded skills for a future that's already arriving. If that's your thing, you'll probably like it here. When people talk about the future of tech, the conversation almost always jumps to the flashy stuff. Flying cars, robot butlers, brain chips, uploading your consciousness. And sure, some of that might eventually exist in some form. But the technologies that are going to reshape your day-to-day life over the next 5 to 10 years are much less cinematic than that. They're subtle. They creep in through small conveniences, tiny workflow changes, and new defaults you barely question. And honestly, that's what makes them so powerful. Think about the smartphone. When it first showed up, it didn't announce itself as a world-changing invention. It was just a better phone, a nicer screen, email in your pocket, a couple of apps. Then, quietly, it became your camera, then your GPS, then your wallet, then your boarding pass, then your music player, then your workplace. At no single moment did everyone stand up and say, okay, the world has changed now. It just shifted. That's how transformative technology actually works. It doesn't explode, it creeps. So the real question is, what's creeping right now? Let's start with the obvious one, artificial intelligence. But not AI as a shiny toy you occasionally open in a browser tab. AI as something that moves from a tool you use to a coworker that's always there, not replacing you outright. Not yet, and probably not in the way people dramatize. More like an always-present assistant that quietly handles the tedious parts of whatever you already do. Take a simple example. Right now, if you're a project manager, you probably spend hours every week writing status updates, summarizing meetings, tracking who said what, and chasing people for information. It's not glamorous work, it's necessary glue. Within a few years, AI will handle almost all of that automatically. It'll sit in your meetings, take structured notes, highlight decisions, draft follow-up emails, and nudge people when deadlines are approaching. It might even flag when two people are talking past each other and suggest a clarification. Your job won't be to do those tasks from scratch. Your job will be to review, correct, and make judgment calls. Now zoom out for a second and apply that pattern elsewhere. This same shift is going to ripple across almost every knowledge work job. Writers won't be staring at blank pages. They'll be editing AI drafts that are 70% of the way there, shaping the last 30% that actually matters. Designers won't always be starting from a blank canvas. They'll pick from AI-generated mock-ups and refine the ones that best fit the brief. Analysts won't spend most of their time wrangling raw data. They'll start from AI-generated insights and focus on what's valid, what's misleading, and what actually matters to the business. Lawyers will have AI-curated case law and suggested arguments instead of digging for hours just to find the right precedent. Marketers will have AI-written campaign concepts, headlines, and variations, and their value will shift to understanding the audience deeply enough to know which angle is truly right. The work doesn't disappear, but the nature of the work changes completely. And this brings us to a core idea that most people miss. The people who thrive in this environment won't necessarily be the ones with the best technical skills, or the ones who know the most tools, or the ones who learned prompt engineering hacks from a random Twitter thread. They'll be the ones who get really good at something that sounds simple but isn't, defining what done actually looks like. When you're working with AI, the quality of what you get back depends almost entirely on how clearly you can describe what you want. Vague instructions give you generic results. Precise instructions give you useful results. But here's the catch. Most people have never been forced to articulate their standards that precisely, because for years they were doing everything themselves. The quality lived in their head. It was a feeling. Now they have to translate that feeling into language that an AI and eventually a whole system can understand. That translation is a skill. It's not some magical talent you're born with. It's something you can practice and get better at. But right now, almost no one is deliberately practicing it. The few who are, they're going to have a ridiculous advantage when these tools stop being optional and become the default in every workplace. We could honestly do a whole separate video just on that skill, but let's keep going, because AI is only one piece of what's creeping in. There's another shift quietly building in the background, and almost nobody is talking about it in a grounded way. Spatial computing is about to go mainstream. If that phrase sounds abstract, here's the simple version. The way we interact with computers is moving from flat screens to three-dimensional environments. Instead of tapping and clicking on rectangles, we'll be looking, gesturing, pointing, walking. Instead of information being trapped inside a phone or laptop, it'll be layered on top of the physical world around us. And I know people have been promising this for years. Headsets, virtual reality, augmented reality. Most people either tried it once and got motion sick or never cared. The reason is simple. The early versions were clunky, expensive, and limited. But there's a difference between early technology and mature technology. Early tech feels like a gadget. Mature tech disappears into the background. We're approaching that crossover point. Headsets are getting lighter. Displays are getting sharper. Tracking is getting more precise. But more importantly, the software is finally catching up to real workflows, not just tech demos. Once you can wear something comfortable that actually helps you work, learn, or create, and doesn't make you look like a sci-fi extra, that's when adoption curves get steep. So what does that look like in practical terms? Picture this. You're a mechanic. Instead of flipping through a PDF manual on a laptop, your headset shows arrows over the actual part you need to remove, step by step, in real space. Or you're learning to cook. As you look at your cutting board, subtle overlays tell you, slice this thinner, or you're about to burn that pan, turn the heat down now. Or you're working from home, but your entire setup, documents, charts, notes, whiteboards, is floating around you at the size that actually makes sense for your brain instead of being crushed into a 13-inch rectangle. None of those are science fiction. They already exist in limited early forms. The question isn't, will this happen? It's, will you be ready when it stops feeling like a toy and starts feeling like the default way to work and learn? Let's move to another quiet shift. Personalized AI. Right now, when you use most AI tools, every new chat starts almost from zero. It knows the general model, but it doesn't really know you. It doesn't remember your tone, your preferences, your ongoing projects, your constraints. It doesn't know that you hate meetings at 8 a.m. or that your team always calls a certain metric by a weird internal nickname. That's going to change. Soon you'll have AI systems that build a profile of you over time, not just what you click, but how you write, how you decide, what you reject, what you consistently care about. They'll adapt to your style, your goals, your long-term projects. They'll remember that 3 months ago you said, "Remind me to revisit this idea when we're less busy," and they'll actually surface it at the right moment. It'll feel less like asking a new assistant for help and more like working with a colleague who's been with you for years. Last time you turned down this type of client because the scope was unclear. Do you want to ask these 3 clarifying questions before you say yes? This email sounds harsher than your usual tone. Do you want me to soften it? Incredibly convenient. Also, slightly creepy, because this opens up a bunch of questions we haven't really answered yet. Who controls that profile of you? What happens if the company behind your assistant goes out of business, gets acquired, or gets hacked? How do you prevent subtle manipulation when something understands your patterns better than you do? These aren't reasons to avoid the technology altogether, but they are reasons to engage with it intentionally instead of just accepting every default setting because it's easier. Now, let's zoom out from software and talk about something much more physical: energy. Energy technology is advancing faster than most people realize, and the curve here has huge downstream effects. Solar panels have gotten dramatically cheaper and more efficient over the last decade. Battery storage is following a similar path. In many places, the cost of renewable energy is already competitive with, or cheaper than, fossil fuels, even without subsidies. This stopped being just a climate or ideology discussion. It's an economics discussion. When the clean option is also the cheapest, adoption doesn't rely on people doing the right thing. It just happens, because the spreadsheet says so. What does that mean for an individual? If you're thinking about big purchases, cars, homes, where you work, energy costs and reliability are going to shift the math. Electric vehicles are approaching price parity with gas cars in more markets, especially when you factor in maintenance and fuel. Home solar and battery storage are becoming practical for a growing number of households, not just early adopters with big budgets. Companies might rethink where they put offices or data centers based on stable, cheap energy access. You don't have to become an energy expert. But paying basic attention to these shifts can put you on the right side of some very big, very boring economic trends. And while we're on the topic of the body and the physical world, let's touch quickly on biotechnology. The tools for understanding and modifying biological systems are getting much better, much faster. Gene editing is becoming more precise. Personalized medicine based on your specific genetic profile is moving from cutting edge to mainstream trial. Wearables are monitoring more than just steps and heart rate. They're quietly collecting data that used to require a lab visit. That pushes healthcare from reactive, you show up once something is clearly wrong, toward predictive. We see a pattern emerging. Let's intervene before you feel anything. That's potentially amazing for quality of life, and also complicated. Privacy, access, and inequality become huge questions here. Who gets the benefits first? Who owns the data that lives literally inside your body? How do we avoid creating a world where some people are effectively upgraded and others are left behind? And here's a key pattern you might have noticed across all of these areas. The technology is moving faster than our ethical frameworks, regulations, and social norms. That's not new. It was true with the printing press, with radio, with television, with the internet. But the gap feels wider now because the tech is accelerating and the impacts are more intimate. So if there's no single gadget to point at and say, that's the future, what is the real future technology we should be watching? It's not any single invention, it's the convergence. AI plus spatial computing creates intelligent environments that understand what you're doing and what you might need next. Personalized AI plus biotechnology could lead to health interventions tailored not just to people like you, but to you specifically. Renewable energy plus advanced manufacturing could make local, flexible production economically viable again, changing how supply chains work and where jobs sit. Robotics plus AI could transform everything from elder care to construction to agriculture. Quantum computing plus machine learning could eventually solve optimization problems in logistics, chemistry, and finance that currently eat up massive resources. And here's the tricky part about convergence. It's almost never obvious in advance. The people who launched GPS satellites weren't thinking about ride-sharing apps. The people who built the early web protocols weren't imagining short-form video algorithms deciding which 15-second clip you see first when you wake up. Unexpected combinations create new realities. And those new realities create both problems and opportunities. So where does that leave you and your work? The people who navigate the next decade successfully won't be the ones who bet everything on a single technology. They won't be the person who only knows one coding language or one tool or one platform and defends it at all costs. They'll be the ones who stay curious, keep learning, and build the meta skills that sit above any specific tool. They'll learn how to define outcomes clearly. They'll notice when their own assumptions are out of date. They'll be comfortable saying, I don't know, Let's try it and see. They'll experiment early with new tools, not because they chase every shiny object, but because they want to understand the shape of what's coming before it's mandatory. They'll build networks of people who share knowledge openly instead of hoarding it. People in different industries at different levels, seeing different parts of the puzzle. And maybe most importantly, they'll practice something we don't talk about enough: updating. Updating your mental model when reality sends new information. Updating your habits when the old way stops working. Updating your skills before the market forces you to. So here's the real takeaway. Future technologies aren't going to crash into your life all at once like a movie plot twist. They're already here, quietly evolving, reshaping what normal looks like in slow motion. The window to adapt is open right now. The most valuable thing you can do isn't to memorize every new tool or chase every trend. Tools will come and go. Interfaces will change. Companies will rise and fall. What sticks is your underlying capability to learn quickly, define your intentions precisely, translate "this is what good looks like" into something others, humans or AI, can act on, and adjust your approach when the landscape shifts under your feet. That's what future-proofing actually looks like. Not predicting the future correctly, just becoming excellent at adapting to whatever actually shows up. Now I'm genuinely curious. Of all the technologies we talked about, AI as a coworker, spatial computing, personalized AI, energy, biotech, or the convergence of them, which one do you feel is going to hit your specific work or life the hardest in the next 5 years? From where you sit, in your job, in your country, in your industry, what's already creeping in? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them, and a lot of future videos come from those perspectives. And if you want more realistic, no-hype breakdowns like this, about how AI and emerging tech are quietly changing work, money, and opportunity, consider subscribing. We go deep here, without the clickbait, and with an honest admission that nobody has the full map. We're all figuring it out in real time. Thanks for thinking this through with me.